Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to another Brew Crew Review Podcast. Joining me today is co-host Vince. Vince, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Craig. How are you?
All right. So
good. Do we have Scotty or Chad on?
They've got an open invitation, so we'll see.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Hopefully, they can bring some more biting commentary about the Milwaukee Brewers to people, great people of West Dallas and Wisconsin and around the world. But as of right now, they've got other priorities apparently. So anyway, you and I who love baseball to no end, especially Milwaukee Brewer baseball, we're here, and that's all that counts. So,
yeah.
Well, anyway, we're heading toward the end of May. Let's start with the good news, and then we'll get to the bad news. Heading toward the end of May, the Brewers are currently, as of this taping, on May 19th, in first place in the NL Central, and I believe the Cardinals are still in last place in the NL Central. So, if you would have told me before the season started, that's where we'd be at. In spite of a bevy of injuries to key players, I'd be like, okay, I'll take it. So let's just start with that positivity. Now the negative is the injuries are really starting to pile up to the point where it feels like the entire season is being held together with Band-Aids and duct tape. And if one of them comes off, the whole thing will unravel and our house of cards will be exposed. And no pun intended. The Cardinals are on the opposite end of this spectrum where they've had a horrific first 6+ weeks of the season, really, for their fan base. And they seem to be turning it around, unfortunately, with a big series win at home against the Brewers just this past week. So that's the bad. I guess let's real quick with some news. Wade Miley is going on the injured list now with, I believe it's like a strained oblique, and they expect him to be out at least probably 3 weeks, possibly longer. It seems like a big blow. And also just a couple other moves. We've designated for assignment Gus Varland after getting torched on Monday against the Cardinals for, I think, 8 runs, less than an inning. And then Luke Voigt also went on the IL with some neck thing, possibly because of his gold chain, I'm not sure. And also, so the Brewers have signed.
You really don't like that gold chain, do you, Craig?
Not as such, no. And we've signed Darren Ruff, another journeyman first baseman / corner infielder. And I feel that the Brewers, I'm not sure how many journeyman corner infielders they have left to cycle through in Major League Baseball, as they've been doing that pretty much since Prince left. So anyway, what are your thoughts on all this, Vince?
It's obviously been kind of a busy week or two for roster moves. It's been, where do we start? I guess just to kind of analyze that, I'm not opposed to, taking a flyer on somebody like Darren Ruff. I don't know how to actually pronounce his name, but it's been frustrating watching, guys like Luke Voigt not meet expectations. So there is that. I think that I would echo the sentiments of a lot of Brewer fans in saying that we certainly had higher expectations of Voigt to a degree, at least. And it's not just that, he's hitting a little less than we wanted to. It's that he's really been struggling. I mean, his numbers are pretty woeful, and unfortunately, it kind of has been fitting into a pattern here in the last couple seasons for him. I think ever since the pandemic shortened 2020 season, he's really struggled. The timing was also off. I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but Keston Hira also suffered an injury in Nashville the week that we signed Darren Ruff, so he wasn't even an option to call up to play first base like a lot of Brewer fans had kind of hoped for after Hira's incredibly hot start in AAA. So that was no longer an option. So I'm not surprised that we signed somebody like Darren Ruff. I would suspect he's probably not going to last terribly long in the organization, but who knows? We shall see. One other thing that you did not mention, I don't think, is that the Brewers also called up Trevor McGill, who made his Brewers debut in the last game in the series in St. Louis, and JB Bukauskas, who, again, I'm butchering these names, who has not yet appeared in a game, but those two guys were also called up. So just a lot of flux. I know that Jake Cousins was also called up. It's just, constant with these injuries right now. And I'm really concerned with our starting pitching depth, which, as you know, Craig, was supposed to be one of our strong suits going into the season. We were, I think joking around on a podcast back in February or March after we signed your favorite Wade Miley that, we had 6 or 7 actual legitimate starting pitchers, but now with injuries to Miley and Woodruff and Ashby and even guys like Jason Alexander, we've seen that depth quickly dissipate. I mean, we've just been I think hit harder with the injury bug than any other team. I think a lot of fans of other teams would probably say that about their clubs as well, but I really think if you looked at it objectively that the Brewers have been hit incredibly hard, and unfortunately that's also coupled with guys like Eric Lauer struggling, somebody that we did count on to be a real solid member of our starting rotation going into the season. He has not had his best baseball, or has not played his best baseball here in the first, month and a half of the 2023 season. So we're not even getting the production that we were hoping to get from the guys that we had counted on. Lauer was moved to the bullpen instead of making his last start at least. And there's a little good news, I guess. Adrian Hauser is back, but that's another injury that the Brewers have had to contend with and kind of work around. So at this point, I think it's just, Burns and Peralta that have avoided any hiccups from our starting rotation here in 2023.
Yeah. Now, on a real quick side note, because I know that all of our listeners and Twitter followers are definitely being kept abreast by you on your all-time Brewers baseball card collection. We're trying to get a Brewer card signed by every living and deceased, even a major league Brewer of all time. I'm actually curious, are we approaching like the almost 1,000 Brewers on the all-time roster, or are we over that point?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking about that, Craig. That's good of you. We're at 972 officially right now, and that is taking into account the debut of McGill this week, but again, not counting somebody like Bukauskas, who has not actually appeared in a game yet. So 972 is our official total. Of that, I'm at 944 right now, and most of the guys that I need are on the team currently. So just haven't had an opportunity yet to try to get these guys to sign. So
that 972 total, that includes McGill and Ruff, who made their Brewer debuts this week.
Yeah, the criteria that the Brewers and Major League Baseball and Baseball Reference and Saber all officially use is that you have to appear in a big league game with that club to count. So there's been a couple guys that are called Phantom Brewers that I do not count. Guys like Cody Scarpetta, who was on the big league roster but never actually appeared in a big league game, does not count. But guys like Neil Heaton, who pitched in one inning as a Brewer, do actually count. So yeah, interesting.
Well, that's kind of sad about Scarpetta because if you remember correctly, the Brewer Review interviewed Cody Scarpetta in the minor leagues, and in fact, he's one of the only players that reached out to us and wanted a copy of his interview for his parents, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and Scarpetta never actually appeared in the majors with any other team either. So he kind of joins a weird list of guys like Larry Yount and others who, again, were on the roster. It's sort of the opposite of Moonlight Graham from the movie Field of Dreams, who actually did at least appear in a game. These guys, they get so close. They put on a big league uniform, and yet they don't actually appear in a game, not only with the Brewers, but with anyone else. In the Brewers case, another guy that comes to mind with that situation is Trey Supak. And actually, Harvey Keene did that too in the 1970s. He came back several years after he had retired, came back to collect an MLB pension, thought he would get into a game as a pinch hitter, and never actually did. So there have been a few in Brewers history that are technically not part of this project. But yeah, we're at 972 total overall.
Interesting. So, and just out of curiosity, like what's the about just rough average amount of new Brewers that that get added to the all-time roster each season?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Scott's interns have really done well this year. I've got a lot of that research right in front of me. So right now the Brewers are sitting at Hold on, bear with me, audience. We're at 39 players total for the 2023 season already, which is quite a few.
Wow. Well, you're going to be
Yep.
kept a busy man for a while.
They're not all new players, unfortunately, but other years, like looking through, other seasons, that's we've had years over 50 before. I believe that the David Stearns era has set both of the top two records of the franchise history in terms of guys playing on the roster over the course of any given season, and it seems like Matt Arnold is going to continue that pattern. Both with the injuries and with the tendency to use guys for a couple innings from the bullpen and then send them back down, even without injuries. Guys just in the last couple of weeks like that, or Bennett Sousa had that happen where I think he pitched. I know he only pitched in one game. I think it was just one inning, but then he sent right back down. Jansen Junk came up and made one start, and then he sent back down. So there's a number of guys where that's happened already this year.
Wow, interesting. Well, I just want to give kudos to Scott's Vegas interns, Jade and Raven, for helping out with your collection, all these awesome facts and Brewer things. But anyway, back to the 2023 season, and definitely keep our listeners and Twitter followers updated on your progress on that, because I think it's a pretty awesome collection.
I posted just yesterday. Actually, I did get a card back yesterday in the mail from Joey Weimer, and
nice.
That was good. That one was a signing. It wasn't just pure through the mail, but it still obviously counts. And so I did post a picture on our social media, where I had the interns do it. Posted a picture of the Joey Weimer signed card that I got back, and so that was pretty cool. I've actually got a couple of cards out right now. Guys are doing some signings. Not that I work for them, but Waukesha Sports Cards is doing a couple signings coming up. They announced this week with both William Contreras and Brian Anderson. So I did send in cards for that already as well.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so back to the Brewers and their injury. Like, let's just focus on a couple of ones just to point out. It's unfortunate because it seems like we've had this depth, and like you said, we're kind of built like the Rays, where we're built with some depth and versatility on the roster. And Stearns and Arnold, who both were Ray alums, so to speak, took that philosophy over to the team, and they continue on that tradition. With that being said, it's really, helped us stay in first place. I think some of that versatility and depth. However, we're really testing that depth at this point. And not only that, but some of the guys further down the charts are getting injured as well, and that's just unfortunate. So when you talk about Keston Hiura, who again somehow cleared waivers, no other team wanted him. He went to the minor leagues. I think he hit 11 home runs in the first month in the minor leagues at AAA. He's still striking out a lot, but really showing power of a major leaguer. And of course, Voit has a neck issue within the last week, and I'm sure Keston Hiura would have been considered for a call-up. However, he got injured the same day or roughly of the same period of time, and therefore it was an option, and led to us signing Darren Ruff, who doesn't necessarily excite too many folks, but I'm sure hopefully he's a nice veteran. And then even looking back to like when Garrett Mitchell got hurt and is basically out for the season, we had Sal Frelick at AAA, who had a really nice World Baseball Classic and the start to the season, and I thought he's going to be a really nice major leaguer. Could have really been a shot in the arm to the team. However, he got injured the same time frame as Mitchell, and we've had to roll with the guys that we had. So it's just that type of season. And now as you pointed out at the beginning of one of the first preseason podcasts, we were talking about after the Miley signing how much depth we had at the starting pitching. Well, we're seeing now just how much that the depth that we had wasn't even enough or isn't enough. We're to the point now where we probably have to consider possibly signing someone. And obviously the first person that pops in my mind is someone like Madison Bumgarner, who is obviously past his prime, pretty much washed up, but he is only, I think, 33 going on 34 years old, and still would probably have something to offer in the way of veteran, leadership and just innings eating at this point. I'd much rather see someone like that rather than once Jason Alexander gets healthy, or even more Colin Ray or whatnot. And no offense to those guys, but the Brewers need to get healthy at some point. The good news is Brandon Woodruff is, I think, on track to be back toward the beginning of June, I believe. He's so that's something to definitely look forward to. Wade Miley hopefully doesn't isn't having too much of an extended absence because he's been really vital to our success so far this season. But unfortunately, some of the other depth that we thought we had, Ethan Small, we thought going this season, well, he got transitioned to the bullpen, and he's been pitching there at AAA, so he's not really an option. He's not stretched out right now to be a call-up candidate, even though he's on the 40-man. And then another guy that we acquired in the Hader trade, Robert Gasser, who I know we all had high hopes for, had a great season last year between AA and AAA. Well, he's having a rough go of it so far at the AAA this season. His ERA is over 5, and I believe he's walked like 21 guys in 32 innings or something like that. So again, not ideal. He doesn't seem, I think if you call him up, it's a recipe for disaster. He's just not showing he's ready. So again, where do we turn from here? It's a good question. In fact, we're going in this weekend against the almighty and powerful Rays, and we don't even have a starter listed for Saturday, which is tomorrow, for the series. I should also point out that at some point in the last 10 days, Eric Lauer was quote unquote moved to the bullpen. He had to come in relief of Colin Ray and pitched 5 innings, a really nice ball, one game this week though. So my guess is that he will get moved back into the rotation just out of pure necessity at this point.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of what I was alluding to earlier too, Craig. I would tend to agree. What do you think of a guy like Ethan Small? Ethan's pitched in 12 games this year. He's got a 2.33 ERA at the moment.
Well, I think he's doing well because he's been pitching in shorter outings in the bullpen, and obviously, usually relievers can keep their ERAs down because of a lot of times they're coming in just to face some of the same sided or same handed batters or whatnot. And, so they really, can keep their ERAs lower than a starting pitcher. And generally speaking, with that being said, I mean, if I were the Brewers, I would seriously consider possibly stretching him out and putting him back in the rotation at AAA.
That's
what I'm
saying. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that. It's not an immediate fix. I get what you're saying about Bumgarner, and necessity leads us to do all sorts of things that we may not want to do. I don't know what Bumgarner's got left in the tank. It's unbelievable actually how much he has fallen off. Looking at some of his numbers just in the last actually ever since he signed that contract with Arizona prior to the 2020 season. I mean, it's been unbelievable watching his fall from grace. I think that this year, let's just double check from Scotty's interns, 10.26 ERA in 4 games this season, obviously a small sample size, but his 4.67 ERA in 2021 in 26 games was his lowest ERA in the last 4 seasons.
Yeah. So no, definitely. I think they need to consider all options. But the thing about Bumgarner that obviously he's fallen off a cliff, and like I said, he can be definitely categorized as washed up. Just the mere fact that no one's signed him and he's already been out there able to be signed, and no team has been willing to sign him, is not a good sign, obviously, for what other teams are evaluating what's left in his tank. With that being said, I'm always a fan of bringing in veterans, especially guys with like deep playoff experience. And, obviously Bumgarner is like literally a legendary playoff performer in his time with the Giants. Just with a younger roster and young pitching, especially some lefties that we have like Lauer, Ashby, some guys that you can really kind of give advice, even if it's like to teach them a new pitch or to help with their mechanics or almost be like a pseudo another coach or something like that. I always like having like veteran hurlers on the roster whenever possible, and not a ton of them, but I don't know, he just seems like someone that could add something to the team. But with that being said, I don't know how much he's looking for. I don't know like what our evaluators think. So again, this is just spitballing. There could be someone out there they like better, and they could just be going with internal options or considering internal options as well. So it's tough.
He'd be cheap, I think, because the Diamondbacks are still on the hook for his actual contract. So the Brewers only have to pay him the league minimum salary, and then the rest comes from Arizona. So I don't think it's a money issue. I know that he had a problem back in the day with the way that the Brewers threw their starting pitchers, he had organizationally. And I don't know if that would be an issue at this point. I mean, my guess is he's a little bit in a desperation mode, maybe. If he wants to continue pitching, he's obviously going to have to do something else this season. So, or maybe he's content with his money and his career, and he's going to go and go sit at home in North Carolina and hunt for the rest of his life. And that's that. He's got 134 wins. He's got a 3.47 career ERA. He's had a nice career. It's a 15-year career. It's hard to believe he's only 33. It seems like he's been around for 20 years.
And like you said, the Diamondbacks are on the hook for paying him pretty handsomely even this season. So he's not necessarily, going. It just depends on what desire he has to play. And he seems like someone who's got competitive fire. And he'll probably want to get back out there, but sometimes the writing is on the wall, and I think it definitely is for him. But with that being said, again,
he's making $23 million this year. I don't think he's hurting too much.
No, I think he'll be fine. But with that being said, obviously the Brewers have a tougher schedule here and coming up. We've got the Rays this weekend, and then we got homestand against the Houston Astros, World Series returning champions, and the Giants, who are kind of have their arrow finally pointing upward. And then we go to Toronto right after that. So again, these are not easy games, and to go into these series with like some patchwork rotation, it is going to be tough. One guy I'd like to point out and get some kudos to has been having a great couple of weeks since our last podcast, and that's Owen Miller, of course, Wisconsin native.
Yep.
He at one point had I believe a 9-game hitting streak and like an 18-game on base streak, which is pretty impressive, especially he was been mostly a utility and bench player up until the point he got into action. So he's been kind of a huge saving grace for this, the inadequacies of guys like Luke Voigt and Jesse Winker. So again, the thing with Miller that makes him so awesome and kind of a super weapon is his versatility. He's been playing some of the corner outfielder. He has ability to play pretty much anywhere on the infield, first base, third, even he hasn't had some experience at short even. So basically he can play anywhere besides catcher and pitcher, and that's a pretty valuable guy to have on your roster. Well, and center field probably. So, but still that's a pretty valuable guy to have on your roster for sure. And right-handed hitting, we've been struggling against lefties, and so I think he can help in that regard. So I feel like he's going to be a key factor and get a lot of at bats going forward, and I think it's well deserved.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Matt Arnold so far. At least it's only May, but so far in the year, Miller has a 350 batting average, a 376 OBP. He's hitting great. I think that he's doing exactly or what we would hope that he'd be doing, if not exceeding expectations. And for a guy to be that versatile and yet to have that consistent line of effort be so successful, I think that Miller's proven to be a great addition already, just from what he's done in the first third of the season, or quarter of the season, I should say. So hopefully that continues. I think that the combination of him and Mike Brosseau has been good the last couple of seasons. I've been pleased with our bench and the versatility that our bench has. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Urias eventually comes back and rejoins the team, but that's probably a ways away.
Yeah, that was still probably a couple weeks away. I think he's eligible. He was placed at the beginning of the season on a 60-day DL, so I think toward the beginning of June he'll be eligible officially to come back, but I'm not sure he'll be ready and probably not be rushed. So again, I looked the other day and I think we have like 6 guys on the 60 DL and 8 to 10 guys on IL overall. I mean, that's a huge amount of injuries for a team that somehow in first place to have to contend with, and they've been doing well so far. So, I mean, I almost have to say this is Craig Counsell's best managing job up to this point of any season because of all those factors. Once we get Woodruff back, I really feel like our core big 3, as long as they can be healthy, I think that we can piecemeal together the other parts of the rotation and the other parts of the offense that we need to until some guys get healthy. So, with that being said, there's always this pipe dream of Christian Yelich becoming the Christian Yelich of old, and that's obviously that ship has sailed. He's had some nice gains, but now speaking of injuries, his back issue has flared up, and he's missed the last couple of days. So again, at some point, it's going to be hard to hold this together, and now we're going to have these other teams in our division charging behind us. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic in any way, but this is hopefully the Brewers can right the ship here as we head into the summer.
Yeah, but none of this is unexpected, is it? I mean, we've gotten a bigger league, quite frankly, than I was expecting us to have at this point. And And the teams that are chasing us most immediately, at least, are not teams that scare me, quite frankly, and teams that have also not been playing well when we were not playing well. I have never once, even at the lowest possible depth for them, have counted out the Cardinals. They're just too good of a team. They've proven time and again that they're not a team that you can just give up on. Look what happened in 2011 when we outplayed them so much in our division and then ended up, losing to them in the postseason. They're persistently annoying, and they've got talent. So I'm hopeful that this year is not their year. I don't think it is, but at the same time, we just can't take anything for granted. And my hope is that the Brewers can just play consistently good. I'd like to get back to that ability to win series that we were really doing well the first month of the season, and then unfortunately have not been doing well at the last month, or 3 weeks. But let's hope to get back to those ways. Yelich has been a positive for me so far. I know he's only hitting 258, but I've been pleasantly surprised, just at least with the eye test, looking at him for the last couple of weeks in terms of his ability to get on base and driving runs at key points. And he's got flashed a little power recently again too. He's up to 7 home runs on the year. So, have you heard from our anonymous source Tom Carter about his timetable on coming back? I know that you and our anonymous source Tom Carter were talking about that.
Well, he doesn't like to say Tom or his first or last name if possible. He goes TC by TC, he says, but he says it's one of these things where like it's a back flare up. He doesn't think he'll go on an IL stint, and he's going to basically be day by day until he feels like he can swing a bat without pain, and that's basically the definition of day by day. So he thinks he'll be back within the week and not have an IL stint. But it's just one of those things that you just can't predict on a daily basis, unfortunately. So that the Brewers will have to roll with it, fortunately.
Okay.
But yeah, just going back to NL Central, obviously, if our path to make the playoffs, without a doubt, is going to have to be to win the NL Central. We're in a good position for that right now. Obviously, all the other teams, Pittsburgh's had a nice season. Cubs are slightly overachieving, and the Reds are the Reds. I mean, really the only team I think that we have to beat off of this division is the Cardinals, and they've really had a bad go of it. They're showing some signs of desperation, right, by moving their big signing catcher off of catcher for a small period of time. But I mean, ultimately, we don't play them again until September 18th, and then the last 13 games of the season, we played the Cardinals 7 times, both away and home. And so I think really we're gonna be tight one way or another when it comes to the middle of September. And I think our path to playoffs is gonna come down to those 2 weeks. So we have to play good ball up until then. But I mean, I think my only hope is that we can regain some semblance of health, especially with our starting pitching, as we head toward that stretch run. And I think it's going to be a fun season still. And obviously, if you're a Brewer fan, the weather here in Milwaukee is finally on the upswing, and it'll be an up and down couple of months, I think. But I really feel the Brewers are going to be on track to be contenders throughout this entire year, which is pretty exciting.
No, that's great, Craig. I agree. I think that quite frankly, it's May 19th today, and we're in first place. There's a lot of season left to play. We're in a position that I think we probably all have taken prior to opening day at this point in the year. And this is definitely not the most talented Brewers team that we've had in the last 5 years. So the fact that we are in first place is a bonus to me. So I'm just taking it that way. I think that we talked about some of the gaping holes in talent on this team, and a lot of the guys have kind of exceeded the expectations that I had for them, and quite frankly, even with some hitting issues that have come up in the last 3-4 weeks amongst our younger guys, I still really like the fact that we're giving this young group that all has come up at the same time a significant number of at bats. I think that does help the team down the road in future seasons, especially. So the fact that we're playing Terang and Weimer every day, I think is a good thing, and certainly we would be playing Mitchell if he was healthy. So I'm hopeful that that's going to continue to be the positive wild card for the Brewers this season, that we can exceed expectations a little bit, and some of the lower expectations that we had going into the year. So I would take this going into the season to be in this position on May 19th.
Absolutely. And I think the Brewers were smart and correct in identifying that instead of making big free agent splashes, signing a big hitter or something, that they kind of trusted their youth movement, and they knew that these 4 hitters were on the cusp of helping at the major league level. When you're talking about Trang, Weimer, Mitchell, and Frelick. And I think that was a correct assessment. Unfortunately, injuries have played into that. But yeah, Joey Weimer and Trang have been holding their own at the major level. And I think a lot of times that youth will kind of, help the veterans play up, when you have an influx of youth coming into your ball club. So that's, I firmly
Yeah, I agree. And, injuries are going to happen. It sucks, but it's part of the game. And other teams are going to go through that as well. I do think that it's hit the Brewers harder than other teams, as we alluded to earlier, but it's just part of it. So you got to plan for that. You've got to plan for needing that depth, which we did, but even more depth. I guess this adage of you could never have too much pitching depth has certainly proven true. I have thought that was a little overstated at other points in time, but it's like 7 or 8 starters deep at this point. I think that we'll put it up on social media after doing a little after the interns do some research here this afternoon. But how many different starting pitchers the Brewers have used over the course of 23, and it's only May 19th.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, but and they'll probably be adding to that very shortly. That list.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
But anyway, it's I guess, like you said, optimism is running high. The Brewers are in first place, and I think that they can, they're a well put together ball club, and I think we're going to be contenders right to the end. So it'll be an exciting season as we move forward here. And yeah, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Vince, if you want to tell them where to check us out on Twitter and all that.
Yeah. Remember, we do stay pretty actively engaged on social media. Thanks to Scott for running that. It's Brew Crew Review 1 on Twitter. Continue to send us your emails. We will have time to get to them in our next podcast, hopefully. Brew Crew Review Podcast with an S at gmail.com. Yeah, we look forward to continuing to interact with y'all there.
Awesome. All right. Well, stay classy, Wisconsin, and go Brewers.
Stay classy, Craig. Go Brewers. Thanks, Scotty. Thanks, Chad.